On a new episode of Locked On Cavs for Wednesday, March 8th, let's dive into the Cavs bench, which has not been particularly good. We'll dive into all of that on this new one.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Alster Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning from Fear the Sword, Diamond UPROXX, Cleveland Magazine, The Just Basketball Show, etc., etc. That man over there is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of one right down Euclid. All right, today's show, segment 1, Cavs bench, not particularly good. We'll talk about it. Segment 2, Dean Wade and Ricky Rubio is kind of two pieces that haven't been playing great. In segment 3, we'll look at the Cavs Heat game coming Wednesday and everything coming ahead with that 2-game slate in South Beach. But Evan, to start with the Cavs bench, I think this bench just does not have an identity. That is where I am with it. This team is just not as deep as I think you would like. I understand that when you get to the playoffs, no one really trusts their guy past 7, but sometimes it feels like you can't trust the Cavs players past like even 4, much less 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I would say past 4. I trust Isaac Okoro enough at this point that he's functional to be that two-way guy for Cleveland, where he will give you 8 to 10 points a night in defense. That would be 5.
You trust 5.
I would say outside of 5, the bench, I throw my hands up. It's a work in progress at this point. Like Ricky Rubio clearly is still figuring out the waters of his post-ACL recovery world. Dean Wade has faded considerably. He had a Ben Simmons moment the other night against the Celtics, which I don't think we touched on much when we talked about the Celtics game. And then there's Caris LeVert, who, again, just for me sitting here on this podcast, says it doesn't fit well with Ricky Rubio, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. But the Cavs liked them enough to keep him. And then after that, you have the Jetty Osmonds, the Danny Greens, and now Lamar Stevens of the world, rounding out the back end of this rotation. And it's just it's a tightrope walk. It's a balancing act. This Cavs bench is incomplete for me at the end of the day. And that's all it really is. They are very top heavy, this Cavs squad, where they lean on their core 4 and hope to squeeze out something from a stone fruit that is pretty much dried out at this point in terms of just any type of juice at the end of the day.
Yeah, where I go is none of these guys feel like they fit kind of perfectly, feel like they are feeding into kind of your bigger thing. And I think it is a problem. I think their top 8 isn't as solid as any of the other good teams in the East. And I think that that includes the Knicks, whose a big part of their identity is how kind of deep they are. I think this one's more on the plate of Mitchell and Garland and Mobley to really ascend in the playoffs and carry the Cavs. And it means you can't survive the way Jared Allen, I think, is playing of late, and can't survive, games where Okoro isn't doing enough, or games where Rubio isn't, providing as much as you would like. I think kind of bigger picture, Evan, I also think the big job for Kobe Altman in the offseason is going to be to figure out what the depth is. I think and then you get to the summer and you think about, okay, the Cavs made this Mitchell trade last summer, Garland's max extension kicks in, you still have Allen, you still have Mobley, Okoro has another year before you have to kind of decide what's going to go on there. You did re-sign Dean Wade to an extension just before last season. The rest of the roster feels like it needs a retool. It feels like maybe 1 or 2 of these veterans comes back. Maybe you bring back Lamar Stevens, but they need depth you can actually, I think, play in a bigger way for next season. You have to turn that mid-level exception into something, I think.
Yeah, and based off just my cursory research and just doing some math, I believe the MLE is worth about $12 million this year. So that gives the Cavs a little bit of something to work with, but it's not a lot. Sure, they could try and go over the luxury tax threshold if they want to, or be a cap team at the end of the day if they want to, but I just don't know if they're fully ready to do that at the end of the day. And I think there are some fair questions, is it the offensive style Cleveland plays at times too? Because defensively, they're pretty solid at the end of the day. They're still number 1 in net rating as of this show in terms of just defensive rating, or number 1 in net rating and number 1 in defensive rating, number 9 in offensive rating at the end of the day. But you need to do more to maximize the potential of this young core, especially with Donovan Mitchell still hitting another level and still pretty much at the beginning of his prime. And like, you have Darius Garland going to be entering his prime soon. You have Jared Allen, who's probably in his prime almost or about to hit it. And then Evan Mobley, who is continuously ascending. And like you said, come playoff time, it's going to be a lot of Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley leveling up, growing up, and also just taking the Cavs as far as they can, but like Mitchell being the one who could take them the furthest at the end of the day. But to your point, like Dean Wade is technically under contract. Isaac Okoro,
I mean, it's
well.
he is.
I'm saying technically, yes, he's under contract, but could be used as a trade chips. Ditto for Isaac Okoro. You can maybe move on for Ricky Rubio if you feel like that's about you feel like rocking. If there's like just a more tangible backup point guard option there for you, but the Cavs are kind of hard stuck a little bit too. Like, you have to really bank on the internal growth and development of this team. And yeah, it's natural to assume that all these young players are going to get better, but you unloaded the clip to get Donovan Mitchell. Now you have to just work within these margins that you've established in order to maximize the potential of this roster. And you're not like in a situation like the New Orleans Pelicans where you have the remainder of the Lakers picks and Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson to build around and just work with, and like CJ McCollum, Larry Nance. Like the Pelicans are in a great spot, or like the Grizzlies, who have like a bevy of pieces and they needed help with shooting and they went out and got Luke Kennard. Like, I think the Cavs were a little too passive at the trade deadline. I think that's still going to be my takeaway from this, and maybe they should have gone and acquired some form of shooting, but it's working the margins. And then also, like you said, using that mid-level exception to make a tangible upgrade, whether that is a guy that can play minutes as a starting three if you use Isaac Okoro as a trade chip, or at least a guy that can act as like a shooter or some type of consistent 3-point threat off the bench for you. Because yeah, the Cavs signed Danny Green as like an emergency depth piece, and JB Bickerstaff more or less said that Green still isn't like quite 100% and doesn't have full grasp of what Cleveland does on offense and defense at times. So there's a bit of a learning curve there and a physicality gap to it, but you also shouldn't be relying on Danny Green, who's in his late 30s and still coming off an ACL recovery, to be like your end all be all answer to fix your issues. And the Cavs
they're not
just
playing him.
Oh, they're not playing him either. But they need to get creative this offseason a little bit. And it's going to be intriguing to watch to see what Kobe Altman does. Like, we keep saying, like, oh, this offseason is going to be the biggest offseason of Kobe Altman's career. Like, he has the luxury of the extension that he recently signed. And I think getting Donovan Mitchell certainly buys you a lot of time too. But
sure,
there are going to be expectations coming in from the outside and maybe internally as well. We're like, okay, we have this superstar backcourt of Garland and Mitchell. We have an ascending star in Evan Mobley. We have a very consistent star in Jared Allen. We got to maximize this now and maybe not wait for teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat to age out a little bit, because Boston is still very young. Boston is still very talented. Boston is the defending Eastern Conference champion, and like, they're going to be Cleveland's biggest threat going forward as they try to navigate these waters and level up from being good to great to a possible even championship contender at the end of the day.
I think more than like trying to like, what do you flip? Like, you don't have like picks really to like make big splashes. I think you have to like shoot for the moon with certain things. Like, I think you do like say like, hey, like Boston, would you be interested in like Grant Williams in a sign and trade for Dean Wade in seconds? And when they tell you no, you move on and call Brooklyn and be like, hey, like, do you really want to pay Cam Johnson? Could we take Cam Johnson for Dean Wade and picks in a sign and trade? And then you get
Royce
told no.
O'Neal or something like that.
Right. And like, that would be, I think, smart. I think you have to keep investing in Okoro. Like, he has done it. I think they should almost empower him more than they have to just let him play through some of this. You have to really hope, I think, Rubio rebounds and is better than he has been. I think you're probably re-signing LeVert and like either hoping he fits enough or you decrease his role or you flip him for something else. Josh Richardson could be like a cheap veteran option if you want that. Yuta Watanabe would be like the first name I'm calling the moment you can legally call or like do the tampering thing, because that is a guy who can play the 3-4. He's big. He really can shoot it and is like been just like proven to be like a really competent NBA player. Like, that's the kind of thing you have to do. And like next year, like, what happens with Jetty? What happens with Dean? Like, what has happened with Dean this year? Kind of, how does it impact this? Like, this is the thing that is going to like help bridge some of the gap. Yes, like Garland is going to keep growing and Mitchell, I think, is in his prime and Mobley is going to keep growing and all of that stuff. But I think like the depth and how you, and kind of the versatility can lock in different looks it could help you unlock and also just help you navigate the regular season at times is a really big deal. Okay, we're going to come back after the break. We're going to talk about Dean Wade for 5 minutes. And we're going to talk about Ricky Rubio for 5 minutes. Tight five on both those guys. What is going wrong with them at this current moment? But first, got a new sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Look, we have a new sponsor, our new partner and sponsor, and we're really excited about it. The mobile game Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. If you ever dreamed about becoming an NBA GM and managing your own basketball franchise, well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. In this game, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all of the ups and downs of a season. All of this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. This seems like something awesome to do with friends. I know lots of Locked On hosts are really kind of forming a little league together. That is really cool to see. And that'll be fun to kind of follow. Locked On Cavs listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So go make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the App Store. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. Scan the little code if you're watching on YouTube for us as well. All right, back Locked On Cavs. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell here. Dean Wade, 5 minutes on the clock. Evan, I'm just going to hit you with Dean Wade's numbers since February 15th. When Kevin Love requested his buyout. Since then, Dean Wade is averaging 1.1 points per game while shooting 17.6% from the field and 15.4% from three. 15.4% from three, averaging 1.1 points per game. That is unplayable levels from Dean Wade.
Yeah, the 54% would have been certainly an aberration if that number was true, but...
Yeah, that would have been like a statistical, just like a nightmare.
Anomaly, yeah. Dean Wade hasn't been great, and we touched on this a little bit during the Boston win recap, that he has looked very passive at times. Like, he's passing a lot of wide open shots. You saw this a lot when Donovan or Darius Garland came back from the eye injury, and they're trying to figure out the flow with him as in Wade as the starting three. And you saw Wade wrinkle a little bit, or maybe shrink a little bit when the pressure was highest, where the Cavs like, okay, Dean, we need you to be the third or fourth option in certain offensive sets or certain offensive situations, just because we need you to be the trailer. We need you to be a guy who's a pick and pop threat. We need you to be the guy who provides verticality and spacing. And sure, you are an upgrade on Kevin Love in terms of the defensive prowess a little bit. You're a little bit more athletic, a little bit more flexible as a 3-4 defender at times. But at the same time, like, there's the optics of it all, where like the Cavs benched Kevin Love, a future Hall of Famer and a guy who's paramount to the championship, for this guy. And it's like a bad look. And we talked about how Lamar Stevens having such a great night against the Celtics kind of mitigates how bad Dean Wade has been. But like, the numbers really do put it in a context. He hasn't been good for the Cavs. And I wonder if it's a shoulder thing. I wonder if it's a confidence thing. It could be a combination of the both. But watching the Celtics game again today, as we're recording this on Tuesday at evening, the fact that he gave up that easy layup and then kicked it back out, like, that's really, really frustrating if you're the Cavs, because this is a guy that you developed with the charge. He is a G League success story. You're like, oh, this is cheap, cost controlled depth. Something you and I bang our fist on a lot, or bang our fists on our desk a lot on this show about. And just to see it kind of not work like this, when you're thinking like, okay, Dean Wade in theory provides the skill set that the Cavs need in terms of just like a bigger 3-4 guy who can shoot from the perimeter like this, but it isn't clicking, and I don't know what it is, and I don't think we'll ever really get a clear answer, because you and I don't have the access to Dean Wade in that capacity, or just the Cavs in that capacity, and I just don't know what it is. But at this point, with how abhorrent his numbers have been, you need to look elsewhere, whether it's Jetty Osman, Danny Green, as we had mentioned in the first segment, but like Lamar Stevens being like the main one here. Like, you have to look elsewhere, because like, it's just not working. And you can't afford to keep like doing this song and dance to see if Dean Wade will figure it out, when you have to win these basketball games and maintain home court advantage in the playoffs.
I think it has to be Lamar. It has to be Lamar. Based on the last two games, based on particularly the Celtics game, I think Lamar has given you the most kind of confidence that he's going to hold up on both ends of the floor, particularly in defense. He's going to play really hard all the time. Yes, the 3-point stuff is an issue. Yes, like,
I mean, is it
Like,
as bad as Dean Wade currently? I don't know.
No, it is not. It's not close. He did like make and take a corner three the other night, and that was great. He's not like the perfect playoff guy, but I kind of think you have to go to him right now. And if it's not him, I would go to Danny Green over Jetty Osman. Maybe like what has happened with Danny and him not playing is that the Cavs maybe think there's not a lot there. But like you just watch Jetty defend, and it's like I don't know if this guy's going to survive in a playoffs against wings that are going to go at him and hunt him down. Like Jalen Brunson, if they play the Knicks in round one, is going to just go at Jetty if they do that. He's not going to hold up in that way.
We can just use recency bias. Malcolm Brogdon cooked Jetty Osman 3 possessions in a row, and you saw JB give him a quick hook because of it. And I don't know where Danny Green is at physically. Again, we don't have the access to Danny Green or the Cavs to really get a clear answer on this, but according to JB, at least he's still not like a quite 100% physically, and he's still behind the 8 ball a little bit in terms of terminology. And I wonder if like the Cavs are like, okay, Danny, we need you to be what Dean Wade was, but play more perimeter defense, because he's competent enough. And especially with like Donovan Mitchell, again, weird terminology, him being like a two-way player like that kind of mitigates the need for Danny Green to be like a lockdown perimeter defender, a guy who's like drawing the primary point of attack on defense at times too. But you watch Green against the Pistons, he gets about like 8-9 minutes of burn, and he just shoots 3-pointers, and that's all he needs to do for the Cavs is just stand at the top of the key or in the pocket and just be there as a recipient from a guy driving to the basket, or just acting as a trailer in fast break scenarios. Like that's all you need Danny Green to do, or Dean Wade to do in this scenario. But if Wade isn't going to give it to you, maybe you turn to Green when you believe he's fully healthy and like you feel comfortable enough with him out there with the rest of your guys. Because I do think the trust factor is a big thing too with Danny Green, just because he's such a new face. But I don't know. It's just odd.
Let's move on to Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio just isn't right now, especially on offense.
Yeah.
JB was asked about this the other night. He's been asked about it before. Like basically, it's like he's not at 100%. I think like they're still hoping he's going to get up to speed in relatively, close fashion. The on-off numbers with him, particularly on offense, are just not great. But he's gonna be there. Like I think they trust him. But like you are not getting what you got last year with Rubio, I think, at all. Like it's just that is not what is going to happen here. And like yes, like you got Donovan Mitchell, so you don't necessarily need that. But like they just need Rubio to be competent and like look right. And like he just. I like you have to give him time. I'm willing to like acknowledge that you just really need to understand that like this is maybe not going to take time. Like look how long it took Klay Thompson after missing 2 years to get right and get to the place he's playing now. And I don't think Rubio's ever going to get to like that high of a high, obviously. But like he when you watch him play right now, you watch how he moves, you watch what he's capable of doing. It's not quite right.
He's not 100%. And I know Darius Garland will say he's 100%, or JP Bickerstaff will say like he's 95% of the way there. Like he's right physically, but like he needs more reps on offense. But I do think about like Jackson Flickinger put this bug in my ear the other night. And I do think just playing him with Karis LeVert is kind of stunting a little bit of like this runway you need for Rubio to get more comfortable out there, because it's giving him less opportunities to work as just like a pick and roll ball handler or just a guy who facilitates the offense, because he has to do your turn, my turn with LeVert, it feels at times too. But like the problem is when Rubio does get his number called, or when he is running the offense for the Cavs, like he's not a good 3-point shooter. Like he has come completely back down to earth. This is the Minnesota Timberwolves with Rubio, I remember, before the Cavs acquired him. And the lack of burst is still not there, but it's clearly not there as he's still recovering. And like, again, it's just like a really awkward situation Cleveland is in, because the bench doesn't exist and they're trying to rehab and nurse these guys back to health and to confidence as well. And it's been a swing and a miss at times. And I do wonder if maybe it's some creativity with like staggering Rubio with the starters a bit more, maybe running those 3-guard lineups between him, Garland, and Mitchell at times too. Like there's ways you can maybe empower Rubio a bit more to make him more effective for you. But at least right now, in terms of his recovery, like he's not 100%, and he still has a little bit of a runway to recondition himself and get back to form out there. But the Cavs are just kind of running out of time and opportunities in order to do that at this point.
LeVert is such like a weird piece, because I think like to his credit, he is really like trying to do what they need him to be.
Yeah,
And it just always
I don't want to discredit LeVert. Like, he's played well despite the circumstances, but like sometimes you're just like, it's such a clunky fit.
Well, I think is strong for the last month when he's just like not really hit threes, but like he chased down like what should have been a block against the Celtics.
So,
and like,
well, in the sense of like he's fine defensively, but at least his shot isn't there, but he's moving the rock, and like that's at least a plus, because like if he's not giving you scoring, he needs to give you something else.
the thing is just he's not as good as those other things, and like his best 2 games of the season were when Rubio wasn't back in and one of Mitchell or Garland wasn't there, and like he went off scoring wise, and like. Maybe you get that in the playoffs where he just finds a groove, but it hasn't really happened when everyone has been healthy. And like that is, I take away from that maybe it just like isn't going to happen in that way. And that is tricky in itself. It just doesn't feel like any of their kind of that 8 that we kind of saw when they shortened the rotation, like feel just like they're really peaking right now. And I think Mitchell is going to peak. I think Garland is going to get kind of back to level. I think Mobley obviously is. And those guys are going to drive your winning more than anything else, but it's like you would just feel, I think, a little better about what the Cavs are if like one of these guys was playing better. If I could pick one, just give me a name, Evan. I would pick Rubio. Who would you say?
I would pick Rubio as well, just because Wade's confidence is just completely shrunk at this point. I can't explain it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I just can't explain it. Like again, on paper, Dean Wade makes so much sense for this Cavs team. It's just not working out there.
Yeah, you got to figure it out, but it's something you got to try. Like you've signed him to the extension already, but like, boy, it's not been doing good for a bit now. All right, we're going to come back after this. We're going to look at Cavs Heat, a game that maybe won't have Kevin Love in it, which would kind of suck, but we'll talk about that after this. But first, got to tell you about our friends at FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. All you got to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. You know, a bet I really like in their system right now is how you can build NBA parlays at 20-plus point scores. It's a fun way to pick through the different games and kind of look at what players and stars you think are going to go off on a given night. I love also the Nuggets at plus 800 in the title race. That is a team fully capable of going off and winning, and you can get that at 8-1. That's a good value for that team. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're back here. Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell with you. Cavs Heat, last one of the year between these two teams, or last two, coming up here between these two teams. Evan went back and looked at the box score and looked at some clips from the last time these two teams played. That was the game where we saw Evan Mobley defend Jimmy Butler and really take a lot of that on. I think we are going to see a lot more of that these next couple games. The Butler-Mobley matchup is my #1 thing to watch over these next couple days.
It's up there. Also, just how the Cavs handle the Bam Adebayo threat. Maybe Kevin Love does play. He is questionable with the back injury as we are recording this.
I believe he's got a rib contusion is the official
rib
injury.
Contusion. My apologies. Regardless, there's the emotional aspect of Love, but I think Kevin Love's a little cooked right now. I think he's just him putting up the same numbers in starters minutes.
Should we just go to that? Because he's been bad. It's the 3-point number has not rebounded in South Beach. He's not been rejuvenated by the sands and the warm weather and the no state income tax. He is
or the Dion Waiters pre-flight routine.
Yes, he did not play on Monday with that rib contusion. 25.8% from 3. He has started, but it would bum me out if he couldn't play in these games. It would be I would like just to kind of see it, I just would, and just kind of see what that interaction looks like. It's gonna be interesting to watch it. I wish this is one of those games where I really wish you could flex it and say hey, next year we'll play one more game in South Beach, but that's not how this works. But I would it would have been cooler to see this in Cleveland. I don't know, he may not come back to Cleveland probably until next year. At this point, and that could be he could be in a different place. Like I don't think we're getting this in the playoffs.
On who he signs with. Like, yes, there will be at one point Kevin Love possibly returns, but depends on who he signs with. But yeah, like that's the elephant in the room is like he hasn't been good for the Heat. I know we had a lot of folks just like commenting on our shows and just like my mentions, and I'm sure your mentions, whatever you check, just like the Cavs are going to regret letting Kevin Love go. But like, sure, the Dean Wade not playing great aspect hasn't been great for Cleveland, but at the same time, Kevin Love hasn't been much better. And sure, the Heat play a lot more zone defense, which kind of mitigates some of Kevin Love's defensive concerns, but he was a traffic cone, and especially in defending the pick and roll with the Cavs. And I don't know. You want to do right by a guy who won you a championship, and if he believes he still has enough gas in the tank to play, you allow him to have that opportunity. That's just going to be my stance on it. I think they could have been handled a little bit better. As you said, Chris, it probably ended the most Kevin Love Cavs tenure way possible. But yeah, just looking at who is available, though, the Butler-Mobley matchup is certainly interesting. We did see when the Cavs hosted the Heat last that like JB Bickerstaff used a playoff type move, and he put Mobley on Jimmy Butler and let Mobley kind of play a little bit of the multifaceted two-way defender between like paint and perimeter, and also just like acting as a free safety. But we'll see how it goes. Like JB Bickerstaff did acknowledge that the South Beach flu is a real thing, just because Miami is such a distraction off the court, no matter who you are. But I am morbidly curious to see if the Cavs come in and at least take care of business. If they get two, great. But ideally, you want to go 1-1 in this trip to South Beach, and then shift focus to Charlotte and finish it out 3-1 on this trip before you come back home against Philly. And I don't know, it'll be an interesting test for sure, because this isn't a good road team for the Cavs. Like they're just not a good road team. So like the added baggage of playing in Miami off the court may not make things easier.
Yeah, Cavs on the year 13-19 on the road. They are the only team in the top 5 of the East with a record below 500 on the road. The Knicks at 5 or above 500. The Bucks, the Celtics, and the 76ers all above 500 on the road. Even actually, interestingly, the next team in the top 7 of the East you can go to is the Heat at 7, who are under 500 on the road, for whatever that is worth. Last time these two teams played, Jimmy Butler took 15 free throws. He really struggled to attack Mobley and get off clean shots, and he wasn't good from the field, but he did the Jimmy Butler thing, and he got a bunch of free throws, and that was a big reason why they won. Heat in that game were also shot 45.2% from 3 versus 43.6% on 2s. They were 55% on non-corner 3s, on only 30% from the corners, which is interesting and doesn't feel sustainable. The Cavs have also kind of gotten like wrecked on corner 3s of late, so we'll see what that kind of looks like here. By comparison, the Cavs were 11 of 40 from 3 in that game, 27.5%. Garland and Mitchell were combined 5 of 20 from 3. And like this is very simple. It's very rudimentary, but maybe like the shooting stuff is more normal and the Cavs win. But I would expect, I would be surprised if this isn't like dicey and really tight and competitive at some point. It's just that's just what the Heat do. Even if this team is really not that good, this team is just really freaking annoying to deal with.
I'm going to say and go as far to say that it's going to be an ugly basketball game. Possibly both these games are going to be ugly games of basketball. Like, it's just how the Heat operate. They're very comfortable mucking things up, and that's what we saw last time when Cleveland hosted the Heat. Like, it was just an ugly basketball game with Miami winning the game. Like, a frustrating loss if you're the Cavs, just because like they should have won this game, but the Heat are very, very good defensively. Like, yeah, Kyle Lowry is not there anymore offensively, but defensively he can grind a little bit. Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry being thrown at Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, that's an interesting pressure point thing. Or you have like Bam Adebayo just doing freaky stuff on the interior. Like, they could wall off a lot of this stuff and do a lot of, like, maybe not fully replicate what the Celtics have done over the last 2 games to Cleveland, but like kind of mitigate the fact that the Cavs like to establish a presence in the paint through Mobley, but also like slow down the perimeter attack as well with Lowry and Butler. And then like, we'll see how it goes. Like, Duncan Robinson has been better off. He's been better off the bench for the Heat. Caleb Martin's been better off the bench for the Heat. Like, the Heat are just such an oddly constructed team where like clearly they are several pieces away from contending again, but like they also have the propensity and ability, and at least the coaching staff, to grind teams to dust and then still be the victors at the end of the day, because they're more than comfortable with winning that way. And I'm curious to see what Cavs team we get heading into that game. That's what I'm going to really be watching. Is like, do the Cavs come out swinging, or do they get punched in the mouth and then the Heat grind this out a lot, and then the Cavs end up with their tails between their legs when the final buzzer sounds?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would hope after the Celtics game they do show up and not have the quote unquote tail between the legs kind of thing. Like that's what you'd hope. Notably, standings wise, we'll leave it at this. Cavs are as we're recording this, they're 1.5 up on the Knicks. The Knicks are playing the Hornets on Tuesday, so the Knicks are probably going to win that game. After that, including the Charlotte game, here are the Knicks' next 4. Home versus Charlotte, at Sacramento, at the Clippers, at the Lakers. And the Clippers-Lakers thing is a back-to-back, both in LA. Cavs, meanwhile.
There's like one losable game on that schedule for the Heat and Knicks right there.
I mean,
depending on what you get from the Clippers, there's such a weird team.
Yeah, but that team's good and Kawhi is awesome, and like you never honestly like West Coast road trips are tough, particularly like LA. And then they like that you could convince me that like they like go through.
My brother in Christ, they live in New York City. I think they can handle the nightlife aspect.
Yeah, but like okay, but LA is a different thing for NBA players. It just is. New York's a big deal, but like LA is like holy grail of things for people with lots of money, and I get it. Cavs, meanwhile, Heat twice, Charlotte twice. We're getting down to the stretch when the Heat have a harder schedule, or excuse me, the Knicks have a harder schedule the rest of the way. These two teams do play at the end of March. That will be a massive game just before the end of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a stretch that maybe the Cavs get a little bit of distance if they can kind of take care of business. These are really big, important games. We'll cover them here. We're actually doing something really cool for our Thursday, Friday episodes. We're going to record in person, which is going to be very exciting, and do that for the first time and see what that looks like. Thanks again to Jake. Jake will help us out with that. But if you want to see how we do that, subscribe on YouTube if you have not already. Maybe we'll do some more of those in the future.
Thanks to me for hosting it, and thanks for my fiance for GTFOing for like the next several hours so we can do it.
Whose idea was it?
It was your idea, but
I'm just saying. 50,
the
50
saying
credit.
is happy wife, happy life. I had to run it by her, so...
Well, all right.
So last time I did something unannounced was when my brother stayed the night, and that didn't go over well.
Can I be honest? I'm a better hang than your brother for Ellen's sake.
Yeah, for her sake. Maybe for mine as well. My brother indulges my bad habits. So.
Yeah, and guess what? Guess who doesn't put up with your nonsense? Evan, me.
My house, my rules. Welcome to the pain. Welcome to the Thunderdome, baby.
Then I'll just go to Jake.
I'll be recording in a jacket with sunglasses the whole time.
Then I just will talk to Jake, and Jake can co-host the pod if you're going to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, be sure to be subscribed. It'll be quite the experience. I'll be setting up a pseudo podcast studio at my house for this one, so it'll be fun. I've been actually really looking forward to this ever since Chris floated the idea.
Yeah, it's the Evan Rogan experience brought to you by Locked On. All right, I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens. Back at it tomorrow. Be well, everybody. We'll talk to you after Cavs Heat. And get those mailbag questions in. We need them. LockedOnCavs@gmail.com, YouTube, all that good stuff. Peace out.